Hello and welcome to Philosophy I Need It. Today's topic is the borderline case. The question of when does art stop being art? When can an object can no longer justifiably named art because it does not accomplish art's goal, which is to communicate an artist's metaphysical value judgments. So I would like to go over some history, a term that will help us to understand what is the difference between an object that is not art and an object that is art, and also to show you some examples of what is inside the borderline and what crosses that borderline. And I'll try to say exactly where that border lies. Of course, this is more of an abstract border. There's no specific, this is the border, from this point it's art and from this point it's not art. But rather there is an abstract principle which can help you, the person who aims to enjoy art, understand for yourself and see when is something art and when it is not art. So without further ado, let us begin. So when does art stop being art? What I've demonstrated in the screen right here, you can see two different paintings. They are both radically different, but yet they are on the same spectrum. On the right you see a painting by Cézanne, Paul Cézanne, who was a post-impressionist. And to the left you will see a painting by a Mr. Jackson Pollock. Now the difference between the two is very clear. On the right you can see specific objects, you can see some fruit, you can see a table, you can see a tablecloth. There are things that are perceivable, you can understand it. You get the idea. But to the left, what do you see? Well, I see nothing really. There's splashes of color, random splashes of color all over the piece of canvas. So this is the difference. On the right there is something that human beings can understand, and to the left there is essentially nothing of conceptual value, nothing that portrays or exemplifies human cognition. So let us, before we dive even deeper, I want to understand a very basic term that will help us, I think, pinpoint exactly where is the difference between these two paintings. And that term is mimesis. Mimesis is an ancient Greek term that means to imitate. It means the effort of an artist to create an imitation of reality. An artist, for example, who writes a play, will aim to write a play that seems to be something that's not completely fantasy. It can be fantasy, it can be like Harry Potter, but there are, laws of gravity, for example. There are things that are human. There are human beings interacting with each other. They are using human language. There are all these things that are human. This is the element of mimesis, even in fantasy. So to take another example, let us picture a very beautiful piece of sculpture where we see a person who is very muscular and very beautiful. What the artist is trying to do is to mimic how a real human being looks like. He does, but he adds to that, of course, other elements such as idealization, perspective, all sorts of different things. But he's communicating to the viewers via reality. He's imitating reality. This is what mimesis essentially is. And this was a consensus all across the art scene. Everybody and agreed that you need to create art that is in reality. You need to create art that people can understand, art that relates to people, and the more effectively the art does the imitation, achieves the mimesis, the greater its ability to resonate with the viewers and evoke emotional responses with the viewers. This is crucially the term that you will see when you look across paintings from all sorts of eras. You will try to ask yourself, is he trying to mimic reality? And does he achieve in doing that? So now let us go to an example that easily shows you what the mimesis achieves via an accurate portrayal of it. So this is an example from the 19th century. All of our examples today will be from the 19th century. This is a painting by James Danby, who is an Irish painter. He's attributed to the Romantic movement. The painting is called, as you can see, Disappointed Love, and it's quite clear what has happened in this scene. There's a lady, she's very sad, she looks like perhaps a bride, and her beloved one has disappointed her. And she's crying, and she's very sad about it. What does the artist do here? Pay close attention. You see that he's drawing as a human being that we can understand, identify as a woman. And in a specific landscape, it looks like, nice piece of nature. And he's using also language of symbolism. She's wearing a white dress. There is that red or orange piece of cloth symbolizing her loss. You can see she has a hat, but she threw it because she's all sobbing and she wants to be, more comfortable. So you can understand that by looking at the painting. And this is what the mimesis achieves. It enables the viewers to look at the painting and understand what is going on. And this is, I think, where the key to the question lies. Where does the painting no longer serves as a means of communication, as a means of concretizing values and the artist's sense of life, etc. So this is one good example, I think, from the 19th century, keep in mind, of an artist achieving a mimesis. Now, the anti-mimesis movement really started by the late 19th century with Impressionism. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Impressionism, specifically with this painting by Claude Monet, who was really the inception of the old Impressionist movement. That's where the movement got its name, from that particular painting. And what you can start to see here is a change from like what you received previously with Danby. The change is that there is no longer a very, let's say, a high effort being done to make this a very mimetic work, but rather we have given an impression. The image is much blurrier. We can only see outlines. Sometimes we can only see we don't actually see the boat. We see something that looks more of a shadow of a boat, or the scenery in the background. We can see the sunrise, but it's still not very detailed sunrise. It's basically like this is what Monet has done. So we are transitioning from an era where, like Danby and almost all of the paintings before him, tried really hard to achieve an accurate imitation of reality. We are now seeing an artist trying to achieve an impression of reality, which is Impressionism. But still keep in mind, despite that development, which is towards the anti-mimesis or anti-mimetic movement, we still have an active effort by the artist to mimic reality. We can still see quite clearly that Monet he went outside to the world, he saw this scene, and he tried to capture it as soon as he possibly could. So he captured it using his own style, which was revolutionary at that time, Impressionism, and he still manages to portray to us, the viewers, what is going on. We can understand what's going on in the screen. We can see the sunrise. We can make that out quite clearly. So this is where we really start seeing this deterioration towards a complete rejection of the idea of mimesis. Now, as we move a bit further down history, we see a person like the aforementioned Paul Cézanne, who really started out as an ordinary impressionist, but as we move further down his career, we can see that he was no longer that passionate about achieving an impression. Well, he did achieve an impression, but he also added his own Cézannian touch, which is why it was called later PostImpressionism. So let's have a look first at what Cézanne is doing. We have two card players, but their heads are noticeably smaller than their figures. They look silly. They look like cartoon figures. And this is something that you would not find during the regular Impressionist era with Renoir, Monet, Basile, Sicily. All of these artists, they were still disciples of mimesis in the sense that they were not trying to actively distort reality. They were still adhering to reality, but they applied to reality their own style. With Cézanne, it's no longer the case. With Cézanne, we can see an artist actively trying to distort reality instead of actively trying to portray reality. Instead of trying to mimicking reality, what Cézanne is doing is trying to distort reality, show us a distorted version of mimesis. He's still imitating reality. We can understand that there are two car players here. Keep that in mind. We are still in the realm of communication. We can still understand that. So it is still art, but we are much closer towards the anti-art movement than the actual, art. So let us move further down history. So keep in mind that we were still in reality. We were still, seeing two car players. Yes, their heads were smaller, and with Cézanne earlier we saw the fruit are also disproportionate, but still, we can understand that. Now we turn to Expressionism, or this more particular is Fauvism, which is a movement started by a few French painters, such as Henri Matisse, who really wasn't fond of using colors as they are in reality. With Cézanne earlier, we saw that, the hat makes sense. It's not a green hat, it's a brown hat. Now with Matisse, it changes. Here's a portrait of his wife, which doesn't look that good. She has colors that have nothing to do with reality on her, on the background. We can see green on the right, we can see some purple and orange. Now, that wasn't there when Matisse was painting that picture. Matisse is using the subject to put his own inside feelings, emotions on top of the picture, on top of reality. Therefore, he is distorting reality very actively and very explicitly. This is not a subtle detail like a smaller head. This is right in your face. And this was Matisse being proud of that, proud of his ability to use different colors to express his feelings, things like that. So as we can see now, this is no longer subtle. This is quite clear. This is quite out there. We can really understand that these guys no longer really cared about achieving an accurate portrayal of reality, but rather using reality. We're still in reality, keep in mind, but using reality to show us something that is not in reality. We can see a face. This is something we recognize. We can see she's wearing some clothes, but the color work, which is a key aspect of painting, has nothing to do with reality. So we are really now in the territory close to the border. Let's say we are 20 miles from the border. We're still in reality. We still have mimesis. We still have something there. We can understand that. It's not very, well, I wouldn't say it's very successful art, but it's still communicating something. It's communicating more, I would say, explicitly what Matisse thought of the idea of communicating reality. Now, with the turn of the 20th century, we start to see artists actively trying to show us non-reality. They're showing us things that are incommunicable. Their paintings no longer serve as a means of communication. This is quite clear with Mr. Picasso, which we can see right here. It's called Marjolि from 1912. And this is essentially what came to be known as Cubism. And in here, Mr. Picasso, what he has done is taken objects from reality and he broken them up. He has broken, there are various different objects there. You can see a violin. I can't even understand that, but there is a violin somewhere, and he has put it on this part, and there's human fingers on the right, and it's all completely completely broken up. And this is where I think we're starting to get into the stage where we cannot understand it. Can you understand what is going on without a manual, without, having an art history professor lecturing you about the greatness of this work? Can you understand that? I don't think so. I think it's quite clear that Picasso was not trying to portray reality, but rather he distorted reality. And he made something which is simply incommunicable. It is nothing. It is nonsense. So this is where art no longer serves its purpose. This is where art can no longer communicate the artist's metaphysical value judgments. It can no longer show us what the artist thinks of the world. It can no longer show us any idea in particular, except for the idea that the artist has contempt for showing an accurate representation of the world, which I don't think counts. Anyone can do that. This is not art. You're not achieving anything by showing a negative. There has to be something positive. So with Picasso, it really, and from there on, we can only see things getting worse. For example, with Mark Rothko, we can see nothing. We can see Untitled. This is how most of his work were named Untitled, and we had to call it some name because so it's black on gray. Okay, this is black on gray, and I don't know what you make of it. I cannot make of it anything, and objectively, there's nothing there. So this is nothing, and this is where we have gone to. We've gone from the lovely sunrise impression of Monet, which was a fantastic artist, and then we got to Mr. Rothko with his nothing, black on gray. And this is the complete defeat of mimesis. It wasn't interesting to show a beautiful portrayal of reality. It was more interesting to show a negative, to show a nothing, which I think runs in parallel to the philosophies that were contemporary in that time, such as the ones of Heidegger, who celebrated the nothing. So this is the triumph of the nothing. So where is that border really? Well, I would say it's quite clear. The border is where there's no longer an active effort of trying to use art as a medium for communication of ideas. There are no values there. There's nothing. There's no cognition. Nobody can understand it. Nobody can understand Mr. Rothko. Nobody can understand what Picasso. Maybe if he devoted hours and tried to make a puzzle out of it, he might be able to. But this is not the point. The point of art is to make things clear. It makes us see the ideal, such as what the painting behind me. We can see this is the ideal. We don't need hours of lectures. We don't need to read a whole book about it. That's not the point. Art needs to bring to the immediate, concrete level the abstract, and not vice versa. So, and this is where the border lies. So, I wouldn't give you an exact answer. Where is the border? But the border is where you no longer can understand anything, basically. So yeah, this is my view on this matter, and you can read my essay that I wrote about it. This video is essentially based on that essay, but I also recommend reading the essay. I have a bit of different examples here, but essay is also a good way to, if you want to read more of my views about this subject. And hopefully I will see you in a future video. Thank you very much.